It's playoff week, Rube.
Yeah, I don't know if it feels like it, but I guess maybe as the week goes on, I'll start to get that sense.
Yeah, I think by the end of the week, like they're going to play a game whether anyone likes it or not. So we might as well just get ready for it. Later in the week, we'll go through matchups. We'll talk about the Buccaneers more. We'll talk about them a little bit today. How do you feel about it? Like a few days after that disaster, any better?
No, no, and they couldn't have really drawn a better matchup. The Bucs are not a great team. Um, they were 4-7 not that long ago. They finished strong, while the Eagles finished obviously whatever the opposite of strong is. I don't feel any better, and there's this like thought process of, well, it's a new season. They're still an 11-win team. They're favored. I just don't have any faith that they could beat anybody right now, much less a Tampa team that's won, 4 of their last 5 down the stretch, has some weapons. I just don't feel real confident.
It's a good place to start. This is the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan.
Sorry.
He's a cheery Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's tough to imagine the Eagles finishing off the regular season worse than what we've seen. So all that is fair. I was kind of hoping the way they played on Sunday would mean they would avoid the Monday night game, and that didn't happen. The last time we talked to everyone, we didn't know yet what the schedule was going to be, and Monday night.
Yeah, the 4-5 game is always competitive generally, because it's a 4-5 game, and I think the Eagles are still a big market that gets good ratings, and the league seems to like the 4-5 game on Monday night. We kind of knew all along, all week. We kind of figured it was probably going to be Monday night. The interesting thing is the Eagles won down there, 25-11 on a Monday night at Raymond James Stadium, and played probably their best overall game of the year. They held them outgained them by 300 yards. But whatever happens Monday, we'll have a real we have a baseline, for how this team did against Tampa. They outgained it by 300 yards and held them without a touchdown until the final, I think the middle of the fourth quarter. So we'll be able to get a good sense of exactly where the Eagles are compared to week 3.
Yeah, it is really strange to have 2 Monday night games in Tampa in the same year.
Yeah.
That first one was an early. There were 2 Monday night games. It was a 7:30, I believe.
Yeah, and then the next time there were 2 Monday night games, they played at the same time, which I just didn't get, because you had to kind of pick and choose instead of watching most of one and most of the other. Eagles are now the first team in history to have 4 road Monday night games in a season. I'm trying to remember. Tampa, the Chiefs was a Monday night. Seattle was a Monday night, and so this is number 4. And they're 2-1 in road Monday night games and trending the wrong way. But I guess even with everything that's happened, people still want to watch the Eagles.
Even if they're hate watching, they're watching.
I reckon. And I've gotten so many tweets from people I'm not even going to watch the game. You're going to watch the game. You are going to watch the game.
You're going to watch the game. Yeah, you're going to have to. Even if you're miserable during it.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Do a crossword puzzle? What are you going to do at 8:30 or 8:15 on Monday when the Eagles are playing a playoff game? If you're an Eagles fan, you're going to watch The Office or something. You're going to watch the game.
Maybe by halftime?
Maybe by halftime.
I don't think so. I think it'll be a more competitive game than.
Do you?
They were, yeah. I honestly think it's probably a good thing for them to get away from the link in a way. Yeah, just to be on the road and then I have to get booed after. Although there will be a lot of Eagles fans down there.
Yeah, so fans from both teams will be booing them, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking that it can't hurt to get out of Philly and just not have the distractions you might have here. I might even take them down to Tampa on Thursday and practice at University of Tampa or something. I don't know.
I'd have to change my flight, so I don't want them to do that. People don't understand the stress involved. I'm not complaining. I love my job, but trying to book flights last minute for all these road games when they're going about the playoffs this way is tricky. Like I booked my flight from the press box after our podcast on Sunday night.
I remember this swarm of beat writers in Chicago in 2018 running back to the press box to book flights to New Orleans because we couldn't do it during the game.
Yeah.
By the time they won the game, we had to run downstairs, and we all ran back to the press box and booked our flights. I'll never forget when, and I'm gonna do a one-eye story, but Buddy loved to take the team away for a week before playoff games to get out of the cold, get out of the snow and the rain. And we were supposed to go to I believe it was Atlanta for a week to practice at the Falcons facility. And we're at practice at JFK, and it's snowing. It's like 12 degrees, and we're talking to Buddy because we would talk to Buddy after practice. He would be on a little stand, and we'd talk to him after practice. And we were supposed to all fly to Atlanta the next day, but then there was bad weather coming into Atlanta. So he's like, "You guys want to go to Tampa instead of Atlanta?" And we're like, "Okay, yeah, let's go to Tampa." And he had changed it, so we all had to run back. And we couldn't get online and change our flights because the internet hadn't been invented yet. So we were all calling our travel agents or whatever and scrambling to change our flights like 12 hours before we had to fly to Tampa. And they practiced that week at One Buck Place, which is the old Buccaneers practice facility. So I think it's being used this week. It's in use, but yeah, they never won. They would always go away before those games, and they would never win. So I don't think it really pays dividends. But anyway, you couldn't ask for a better draw, really. I mean, on paper, it's a team they should beat. I don't think they will, but I think you'd rather play them than pretty much anybody right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably fair. The tricky thing is if they do win this game, then it becomes a disadvantage. Right now, it's kind of an advantage. You got an extra day. You're a little banged up coming out of that game, so you have an extra, 24 hours, an extra 30 hours really to get some of those guys healthy. The downside is if you win this game, then you got to go on the road on a short week for the divisional round, and that's tricky. Right. But I mean, you got to get there first, and there's certainly no guarantee.
And I feel like if they do win and that happens, they're going to be so jubilant. They're not going to care when they play. They could play Tuesday. They're going to be playing with house money at that point, which is a crazy thing to say since they're favored. But I think that's going to be the mentality. If they win, it's just going to be like, anything else is gravy. But it's going to be tough because they're not going to get back to Philly till, early, like about sunrise on Tuesday, and then have to fly somewhere on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be tricky, but the tricky part is just winning the first game, and winning any game right now is hard for this team. We had a chance to speak to Nick Sirianni on Monday, day after press conference. He looked like hell. I mean, he clearly, if he got any sleep, it was about a 20-minute nap on the couch at the NovaCare complex. I saw a pretty funny graphic. It was like the first training camp 2021 versus now. And it was like he's aging like a president in the White House right now.
Yeah,
it's brutal on him.
Millard Sirianni right there.
Man, yeah, he looked awful, and I get it. Like I've looked like that on a few of these podcasts without sleep, but the head coach is wearing it a little bit.
Yeah, and he said things that didn't make sense too. He had a few malaprops in there, malapropisms, whatever they are. It's probably just one that I just said. Kind of felt, I don't know, I'm going to say I felt bad for him because I don't, but.
No, yeah. I mean, look, you're allowed to feel bad for the human part of it.
Okay, I feel a little bit bad, but like he was talking about the miscommunications on defense, and he said, it happens between player and player, between player and coach, and between coach and player, which is the same thing as player and coach. I think he meant coach and coach, I guess, which is probably not a good thing, but yeah, he was clearly going on fumes at that point, and that's a tough thing for a coach whose team's falling to pieces. You want to grind and work as hard as possible to try to fix it, but you also need to be like fresh and sharp on game day. And I know a lot of coaches have struggled with that, like because they just go around the clock and sleep in the office and all that stuff. So they do have the extra day this week, and I'm sure that'll help because this team, I think maybe getting away from everything for a day might be good for everybody.
Yeah, and the injury element of it too. Certainly, they have some guys who could use that extra day. Aside from the stuff that didn't make sense, what stood out to you from Nick's press conference? I'll give you one. I started it off. I ended up with the first question, and I asked him about their struggles against the blitz, because it's not just an issue from that previous game. I mean, they're about to face Todd Bowles, so if they don't have answers against the blitz, bad week for it.
Yeah, and Tampa's got like 13 different guys who've had sacks this year. They have a lot of they bring pressure. Bowles brings pressure. I mean, we saw it here. He brings pressure from in a lot of different ways. He's very good at it. It's kind of his signature is blitzing. But from Nick, well,
about his answer though, he owned it. He said there's a lot of different things they can do to combat the blitz. He didn't get into them, but we know what they are. I mean, you can max protect. You can have some hots in there.
That's it. I mean, those are your good options.
Pretty much. I mean, you can sprint out Jalen at times, but like they didn't look like they had a plan in that game, and that was really concerning.
Plan was for Jalen to run around and then fall down or throw it away. I didn't. I'm not at the game. I'm on the set. I don't have the I can't see the field. I'm not watching the all 22, but it didn't look like there were hots. It didn't look like he had answers. It didn't look like they had, and obviously they knew Wink is gonna blitz a ton. I mean, the Vikings, Giants, and Bucks are the three teams that blitz the most in the league. It looked like, and Jalen too. I'm not exonerating. Is that the word? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying Jalen didn't have a role in it, because I don't think he really saw things, but they just looked unprepared for it, and that's really alarming.
Yeah, I think the blame gets divvied up. I think a lot of it is on the coaching staff to give him easy answers, but certainly like just misidentifying it, like that's really where it starts. You got to know where it's coming from, and sometimes it wasn't even disguised that well.
Yeah.
Not from that defense. You kind of know what they're going to do. There were some times where the play call, given the situation, given how much that team blitzes, just doesn't make sense. Like the route tree of it all, it's like all these vertical routes, and you're going, there's no safety valve right now. If you max protect, like, sure, maybe you can get an explosive out of it, but man, it's like sometimes you got to hit a layup, and the Eagles can't hit a layup right now.
Yeah, now obviously without Devontae and then much of the game without AJ makes it tougher, but they have guys who can catch the football beyond that. And yeah, it was I mean, if they're that bad against the blitz on Monday night, they have no chance. None. Yeah,
I agree. And that would be really disheartening in a way, because 2 years ago they go down to Tampa, struggle with the blitz and lose that playoff game. It would like come full circle if you go down there again and still struggle with it years later after a magical season in between. Like, that would be maddening for Eagles fans.
Yeah, it should be. And yeah, I just don't. Do you have faith in them fixing it? I don't.
I have faith that it'll be better than it was on Sunday, just because I don't think it can get much worse. And look, they did handle the blitz against Tampa in week 3 pretty well. I mean,
different team.
Yeah, I know.
They're both different teams.
I agree with that, but also schematically, there haven't been a ton of changes. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm watching that tape this week and saying, like, we can do this. And that was an interesting question, I think, from Bo Wolf about Nick watching that week 3 game. And he said he's more watching it to look at the Bucks, but I wonder if there is some, I think there are reasons to watch that for the Eagles, like to watch themselves and remember what it was like when they didn't stink.
Yeah. I'm sure Nick's watching that film saying, wow, we were pretty good back then. And knowing Nick, he'll show that to the team. Look at this play that AJ made. Look at this play Josh Sweat made. That's the way he you know he's going to do that. I mean, that's how he operates. And I don't know if that'll work. I don't know if that'll help. I kind of doubt it, but I'm sure he'll do that.
Yeah. What else stood out from the press conference?
Well, I think for the first time he officially ruled out Nakobe Dean, that he's not coming back this year. I think it's the first time he's actually said that he's out for the year. We kind of knew that. He talked about Matt Patricia, and he was asked, I believe Brooks asked him if he's going to make another change, defensive play caller, which is a valid question. And we talked about this the other day after the game. I think there'd be some value in that. I think with Matt Patricia, my sense is you have no chance to win the game. You have no chance to stop them. Even that offense, which is not a great offense.
I don't know, man. They put up 9 points.
Yeah. With Sean Desai, at least, I mean, he held them to 11 points and 174 yards and 12 first downs. I know things have changed since then, but I feel like at least you have some chance with him. But he shot that down. He just said no. He was asked if he's planning any changes, and he said, in play caller on either side of the ball, he said no. That was the end of that exchange. And then he expounded a little bit on it, and kind of said the defensive issues we're seeing are a little bit of everything. It's on the players. He listed a bunch of things, including coaching. Didn't mention Matt by name. He did talk about how it's not a completely different defense, that Matt hasn't come in and completely changed everything. But yeah, it's kind of impossible to defend the Matt Patricia defensive coordinator era in Eagles history at this point. 4 games, and they've all had disastrous elements to them, either in one half or the other. He's never given up a touchdown in the first half, 4 straight games, first quarter. Never given up a touchdown in the first quarter. So maybe Patricia can coach the first quarter and decide the next 3 or something. I don't know. It's just so bad right now. I mean, the more I hear the Hassan Reddick stuff, and I was there for that interview, and he went on and on just about how the coordinator switch is responsible for a lot of the communication problems. He said, you have guys who are just learning one defense. Now you got to learn another one. That's the player talking. That's not us. So it's real, and it's a problem.
Yeah. And you see it on the TV copy, you see it on the game tape. There's just confusion like through the snap. It's not even like until the snap. There are plays where, they're communicating as the football is being snapped, and you just have no chance. Like, you're not good enough.
There's a lot of the Nnamdi Kirk Coleman.
No, there's no one to point at. Nnamdi would just point at Kirk Coleman.
Yeah. No, it's just this. It's just.
Well, it's just, like you see a guy's in, like, it's simple stuff. It's like the running back is in motion on a wheel route, and you're late matching him because you don't know where you're supposed to be. And you're just putting your players in a really tough position because they don't know what the heck they're doing. And I know that Matt Patricia is not like a figure of sympathy right now because he stinks too, but I almost even feel bad for him because like he's in an impossible situation. He's right. Trying to change a defense. He's not allowed to change it wholesale. So he's making minor tweaks to a defense that isn't his.
And isn't very good to begin with.
Yeah, and he's not very good to begin with. So it's like, why? You're putting him in this awful position where, like, this could ruin his career, which he didn't have much of one anyway. But, like, this could ruin it completely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's I don't think he deserves all the blame because it's an impossible situation, but certainly deserves a chunk of it. And yeah, it's horrible.
He deserves less than the organization and whoever the heck came up with the idea.
I agree. Totally agree. And I'm sure it was a collaborative decision. Whoever's I have a hunch it was Nick's decision to begin with. I just kind of feel like that, and that Howie and anyone else just went along and agreed with it and maybe felt the same way, but it just seems like a Nick thing, but I don't know that.
I get the sense that the organization will let its feelings be known at times from up on high about coordinators and
that's definitely true. And also, when you look at to make up the defense, I think that's made it even harder. Like, we talked about, I mean, Roby didn't play in one of the games, but Roby, Shaq Leonard, Byard are all new. Even Zach Cunningham didn't play. He missed some games, but he wasn't here for OTAs and mini camps and the first little stretch of training camp. So you have all these new guys. Then you have all these young guys like Ricks and Ringo and Nolan Smith, who weren't playing very much early in the year. Sidney Brown got hurt, unfortunately. But so you have guys like the personnel is so different now than the beginning of the season. When Terrell Edmonds and Dakota, it was just different guys. So you have flux, not just in the coordinator or the play caller and the scheme, but in the personnel too. So there's guys coming and going. They're just learning. They're already learning a new system because Gannon was a D coordinator last year. So now you're on your third coordinator in under a year. With some players who arrived during the season and were still in the process of learning Desai system. Some players who are young and are being asked. I mean, Keely Ringo is 21 years old. He's being asked to learn a new defense in midstream as a rookie when you're already struggling with just trying to absorb everything and learn everything and get comfortable and learn how to be a pro. It's a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of guys on this defense who maybe up front, but in the back seven, there's not a lot of guys who were in the same role as last year. I mean, even Reed Blankenship wasn't a starter last year other than 4 games. So it's just, it's so much change and so much in flux. And I was in favor of the decision when they made it, but I was obviously dead wrong on that. It never should have happened. And I don't think it's something they can recover from.
Yeah. We'll get into a little bit more of that.
We will.
In just a few minutes here, but I did want to finish up with Sirianni's press conference. I think the most newsworthy items were about the injuries. He confirmed Sidney Brown is finished for the year. That's a torn ACL. Feel for him, probably going to miss the beginning of next year. So you're talking about October, probably at the earliest, a return for him.
Yeah.
Typical 9-month-ish injury, and that's if everything goes
a little
well.
Sooner, but he's going to miss all the training camp, all the OTAs, and then who knows? Once he's cleared, it's going to be another few weeks till he can play. It could be week 5.
And the tricky thing is, you could have theoretically gone into next season penciling him in as a starter. Now you got to at least find another stopgap option.
Yeah, it's a big. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, I kind of had penciled him in as a starting safety. Saw some good things from him. Obviously, some things he needs to work on, and that's part of the, that's part of the problem. Is now he can't work on him. He can do it mentally, but missing the spring workouts is not good for a young player who might be a starter. So I don't know who the next man up is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's going to be players coming and going, free agents in the draft, but he was a guy who I thought had a pretty good chance to be a starter next year. So they got to figure that out.
Yeah, and then you add Nakobe Dean to that mix, another guy who theoretically could have been a starter next year, and you don't know when he'll be ready. So you have 2 positions in the middle of your defense now that you're going to have to account for in free agency or in the draft that you might not have had these guys stayed healthy.
Yep. Is Terrell Edmonds a free agent?
I don't know. He should be. He was a 1-year deal, and now he's on that 1-year deal elsewhere. So, yeah.
Stranger things have happened. We know how we let's bring you guys back.
The other injuries, so the ones we have to keep an eye on this week, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Reed Blankenship, Cam Jurgens. Right? It's a lot, yeah. So we'll start with Hurts. He no fracture in that right middle finger. We saw it obviously got displaced during the game. I think he's going to have to just play through the pain. Look, he's going to play. We know he's going to play. He was able to come back in the game, but I don't know if we'll really know how it's going to affect him until we see it on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not going to be 100%, and he's probably never been 100% for a playoff game in his career. I mean, maybe by the Super Bowl, but I think that shoulder was still bothering him to some degree. Obviously, the first Tampa game, he got surgery soon after that. And I think the first 2 games last year, he was definitely still not 100%. Maybe by Arizona he was, but we talk about Carson and his injuries all the time, and I mean, this is 3 years in a row. And look, it's not his fault.
This was such a fluky thing.
It was a fluky thing.
It's follow through, hits a hand, and it bends the finger back.
But he's hits a helmet, right?
No, a hand.
Oh, is it a hand? I thought it was a helmet.
No.
Okay. It's not his fault, but it's 3 years in a row that he's had a late season injury, and you just want to see him get to this point healthy, and he's not. It's unfortunate. Not his fault, but it's just the reality.
Yeah. As far as Devontae Smith, they held him out of this game, so I mean, I think he'll be able to play. How close to 100% is he? I don't know if we'll know that until we actually see him on the practice field.
Right.
I think the biggest one to really monitor this week is A.J. Brown. That right knee, he had a sleeve on it after the game, was walking around okay. The sense I get is clearly that it wasn't something major, but not ideal to have your quarterback and your 2 best receivers injured.
Yeah. Yep. Especially when we're sitting here saying, well, the offense has to carry the defense, has to carry the team because the defense is so bad. I mean, they're all going to play. Those 3 guys, I mean, they're all going to be out there. So it's just a matter of.
I think the one the most question in my eyes is AJ.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he doesn't at least try to play.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's playoffs, so yeah.
Yeah.
Cam Jurgens got poked in the eye, I believe. We'll see. I don't know much about that one. And then Reed Blankenship at safety is a big deal because you're already without Sidney Brown. So you're down to Kevin Byard and Reed. Your backup safety is going to be Tristan McCollum, who they're going to elevate from the practice squad, you would think, for this playoff game. You're just thin there.
Yeah. I mean, they've been thin at that spot all year.
I wonder if they'll have the emergency plan to have Avonte ready to play safety.
I love Avonte, but he looks like he may come back too soon. I mean, he has not been himself. He's not been the player we're used to seeing. Now you move him. I mean, that might be. I mean, they had Mekhi Garner playing safety at one point, but yeah, it's a concern.
Yeah, I know Roby hasn't played well, but I think you'd probably feel better with Avonte at safety, Roby or Bradbury or Eli Ricks as the nickel, and then Avonte at safety.
I guess. Yeah, it's probably your best option. Yeah. But, we'll learn. And by the way, they don't practice until Thursday this week because it's a Monday game. So you'll see the first injury report Thursday, and we'll be at practice letting you know who's out there.
All right, let's take a little break.
We'll look for that Wednesday is what I'm saying.
Sure. We'll come back with the 10 things that have led to this collapse. We'll kind of break those down in just a minute. The Road to Victory bus tour is back. Come rally around the birds with exclusive swag and special guests, plus a chance to win tickets to a future game presented by Ticketmaster. Go to NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com for the full schedule. Eagles fans, don't miss the Eagles Playoffs Live Q&A at Wicked Wolf. Meet us, NBC Sports Philadelphia's John Clark, and the Hall of Famer Ray Didinger. Celebrate with special guests and exclusive giveaways from Philly favorites, including Duncan. We'll see you at the Eagles Playoffs Live Q&A this Thursday, presented by Toyota. Rube, that'll be fun, hanging out there. Get to meet some of the folks who listen to us. That'll be good.
Can't wait.
Yeah, should be fun. Let's get into what you wrote this week. 10 reasons for the collapse. I think there are probably even more than that, but you're able to pare it down to the 10 reasons the Eagles have lost 5 of 6, and they look like a mess going into the playoffs. We'll go through them one by one. We don't have to spend a ton of time on all of them, but not only do I want us to go through them, I want you to tell me your level of confidence they can be fixed either this year or going forward. Sound good?
None. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The first one is Nick Sirianni, and we've talked a lot about Nick in recent weeks, really the last couple of weeks. A lot of this is on him, and I think it's fair to wonder if the messaging has gotten stale. I think players are still playing hard.
Yeah.
But if they don't trust or have faith in what they're doing, how they're preparing, what the scheme is telling them to do, then it doesn't matter if you're playing hard.
So true. And I think it's always a concern. You know, a new coach comes in, he's got this fresh message. The players have never heard it before. It resonates with them. And they stay engaged. And then when they hear the same thing, about, whatever core values or, connecting or any of that stuff, when you hear the same message, whatever it is, whether it's sports or business or anything, if you keep hearing the same thing, at some point it's going to just kind of go over your head. It's like, yeah, there he goes again, talking about culture. Now, coaches are always trying to change the message and keep things fresh to avoid that. But, when we hear Nick say the same stuff in press conferences, we kind of zone out, that here he goes again about got to work hard, get 1% better every day, whatever it is. Larry Karras, here he goes again with Larry Karras and another Mount Union story. If we're rolling our eyes and like, here he goes again, the players quite possibly are as well. And that's a real danger, because when the message gets stale, that means the message does not get through. And they're playing right now like a team where the message isn't getting through. Yeah,
that's fair. And we were rolling our eyes last year when things are going well. And I think it's a lot more palatable when they're winning, right? Especially for players. Like, Nick is very big on consistency. So it's not by accident that he hammers home the same 5 tenets or the same stories or the same messages. He does that on purpose, but when they're working, that's good. When they don't work, it becomes a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll see, how big his toolbox is. Does he have stuff he can get to that they haven't heard before that will genuinely motivate him? I don't know if that'll be enough, but he's got to do that for this game to even be competitive.
Yeah. Your next thing on the list was the run coordinators. They obviously had to fill both spots from last year. That's a heavy lift. Jonathan Gannon leaves for Arizona. Shane Steichen leaves for Indianapolis. Safe to say they've missed both of those guys. And we talked at the time that those are really big hires. Like, you can go downhill in a hurry. We've seen it here in this city before. When you start losing key members of your coaching staff and you don't replace them with the right people.
Yeah, I mean, that was the dynamic with Andy Reid when all those guys left for head coaching jobs from, that whole group, Sean McDermott and Pat Shurmur and Spags and Ron Rivera, who just got fired yesterday in Washington. I mean, that whole group, as they left, Leslie Frazier, as they left and Andy's replacements weren't as good in most cases, you saw what happened. They just weren't the same team anymore. They had success here and there, but I mean, the bulk of Andy's success was that 2000 to 2004 period, and then it was kind of spotty. And I think the head coaching decline had a lot to do with it. It's just happened faster here, and more spectacularly. I mean, he had Jim Johnson the whole time, so he had him from '99 to till he passed so tragically after the '08 season. Nick had Gannon and Steichen for 2 years, and the replacements were, I think we're seeing now were just not good enough, and the replacement to the replacement was worse. So that's been a problem. And all those guys, that left Andy's staff were position coaches. Trying to think if any of them were coordinators when they left. I guess I don't think so, because they're like Marty Shurmur was never offensive coordinator. But anyway, it's that they've been huge losses, and especially Steichen, who I think is as gifted a play caller as I've ever seen. His flair for play calling is really unrivaled from my perspective. So
Side note, what'd you think of his management at the end of that game?
I didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was a really bad day for him, and it cost him. But overall, I think he's very good at it, and I still think he's in the Coach of the Year mix despite that loss. But anyway, man, they really miss those guys, and they miss Gannon. Like, I know people don't like Gannon, and it did end ugly, unfortunate the way it happened from the second half against the Chiefs to what happened after that. And but they were the number one defense in the league till the last play of the season, and there was a reason for that. He's a good coach.
Yeah, and you can make the case they promoted the wrong internal candidate. They did it on offense. Maybe they should have done it on defense, where they had Denard Wilson just sitting there, interviewed, and didn't give him the job. He's down there in Baltimore, and that secondary looks incredible.
Yeah,
hard to know how it would have translated, but a guy who was well respected by his players, and yeah.
I just voted for both their safeties in the All-Pro team, but yeah, the Ravens defense isn't bad, huh?
Not bad, and he's a big part of that. So,
and the players really liked him, and he must be feeling pretty good about the way things transpired. Yeah, and I liked what I saw from Brian Johnson last year. Obviously, the play calling piece of it has been a problem for him, although I don't feel like he's completely to blame for the offense's problems. I think Nick is, and I think Jalen is to an extent. But on the defensive side, I mean, we didn't know what to think at the side. It wasn't like he had this glittering resume. He wasn't one of the, but just hasn't worked out with him or Patricia. And
he looks better by the game, though, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Desai, at least he had some good games. I mean, Miami and Tampa, the second half of the Dallas game, second half of the Chiefs game, Vikings game, Patriots, they weren't bad.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we're remembering the good old days with Sean Desai.
I know. They're going to be on their 6th and 7th coordinators in 3 years next year. Right? They're going to be on their 6th and 7th coordinators in 3 years. That's not ideal.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens on the offensive side of the ball. I'm curious because this offense has become a little stagnant, and we've seen, this is Nick's offense. And we saw under Doug Peterson, the front office, he tried to force other ideas on him, and it came by way of Rich Scangarello, which was a disaster. But curious to see how much he defends Brian Johnson if Brian Johnson's back. We saw kind of the downfall of Doug Peterson was his love for Press Taylor, and that's still going on, by the way. Jacksonville's fired a bunch of coaches, and Press isn't one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think Press is he's a decent coach. I don't really know. But there's something to be said for loyalty. And Doug was always loyal to Chip's guys that he brought in. Press Taylor was a Chip Kelly guy originally with Stout and Phipp and all those guys. But I can't imagine Brian Johnson will be back as OC. I think all those guys will be no longer with the organization.
Are you so sure about that?
I'm not sure about anything,
Okay.
but I'm just I know he's close to Jalen and everything, but it's just
I could see that being a major point of contention between the front office and Nick Sirianni. Because the offense is his baby, right? That's what he cares about the most. And it's not to say he doesn't care about the defense, because he wants the defense to play a certain style, which I think is why they hired Sean Desai. But offense is where his bread is buttered, so to speak. And it clearly hasn't been good enough. And if he's not willing to make the types of changes the front office might want him to make, I could see that being a real issue.
Yeah, I think he'll be more I think the way the season has ended, he'll be more – I mean, Doug won a Super Bowl. I think he had that – Nick got to one but didn't win it. I think Nick will I don't know. I can't speak for Nick. Well, it'll be an interesting offseason for sure. But I think Nick is more likely than Doug to say, okay, if that's what you want, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
We'll see.
The next item here, the 49ers and Cowboys games. I like that you put this on here because before those two games, and they beat the Cowboys already, which is like, that's the weird part about this. But at that point in the season, even though the Eagles hadn't played as well as we expected, we thought they were one of the three best teams in the NFC. And like, you could maybe say the 49ers were clearly above them, but like those were the three, and everyone kind of lumped them together. And then in back-to-back weeks to get pantsed by those two teams, it just showed how far this Eagles team was away.
Yeah, I just feel like those two games, and look, the Cowboys and Niners both had extra days, 3 extra days. That's the way the schedule turned out. But the Eagles were embarrassed in both those games, and I think I sensed that they never recovered from that. That it really, like, the reality that we're just not in these teams. We're not in the same class as these teams. Kind of cut their heart out. I just feel like they never really responded. They never really were the same after that. Something changed after those two games. And I mean, they haven't played well since then. Obviously, they haven't played well during them. They haven't played well on defense since before the Buffalo game. But on offense since, for a couple good games. But yeah, I think those two games really fundamentally showed the whole locker room, you guys just aren't good enough. And they just didn't respond well.
And then they've really lived up to that.
Yeah.
Over the stretch run. The next item on the list was their lack of pass rush. And I know we talk about sacks a lot, not being the only metric, but it does show you a lot. They had 70 sacks last year. They can't get to the quarterback. They can't bring the quarterback down this year. It's one of the oddest parts of the season to me.
Yeah, same here. And I mean, they had 26 sacks the first 9 games this year, and like 13 the last 8. I think that's, or something like that. But their edge rushers didn't have a sack the last 4 games. Edge rusher hasn't had a sack since Matt Patricia became the defensive play caller, and they've got.
Well, they're safeties now, so.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they've got 3 Pro Bowl edge rushers, and I don't hesitate to put BG in that group because he's not playing that much. He's actually playing fairly well when he is in there. But I mean, Sweat won his last 10 games and none in his last 8 games. Reddick's only had 1 game with a sack in the last 6 weeks. He had half a sack in another game.
He sure does look good in zone coverage, though.
How many snaps did he drop back Sunday?
I don't know. More than he should have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not philosophically opposed. I remember, Buddy used to drop back Reggie and Clyde when they ran his own blitz. They don't have any blitzers. That's part of the problem. Nick Morrow had 3 sacks in 1 game as a blitzer, and they haven't done anything. This team hasn't really had a good blitzer in a long time.
Him sending Byard on the blitz in the first half was comical.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, who's their best blitzer?
Avante from the slot.
Yeah.
Nick Morrow, because he's got to run downhill, and that's all he can do. Shaq Leonard, because he's got to run downhill, and that's all he can do.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I've never seen this is 3rd most sacks in history. I get that Hargrave isn't here anymore, but they were getting them from the inside guys early in the year. They're getting from the outside guys, and it just stopped. I think Nolan Smith not panning out the way they hoped didn't help. But I mean, it's like the entire D line just, and I haven't seen a lot of pressures lately either. It's not like they're not. I mean, when they get close, they miss them, and they don't get close that much.
Yeah,
13 sacks in the last 8 games.
Well, we haven't done this for all these because some of them don't really lend itself to it. But like, where's your confidence level this can get fixed?
Very low, because we're not talking about a game or two. We're talking about half the season. They haven't gotten pressure in half the season.
See, I think I'm a little higher on this just because I feel like they do have good players up there. Like I have confidence that, even if it doesn't happen in a playoff game, like I think Jalen Carter is going to be a really good player. I think
I agree with that. I mean, but I'm talking about in the playoff game.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to get 5 sacks. I don't see it. I don't think. I mean, I'm just looking up. Baker Mayfield's been sacked 40 times, which is middle of the pack. There'll be opportunities there. We'll see. Yeah. But I agree. I think they got to figure out what happened to Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter the second half of the year, because their numbers are just, I mean, we talked about the edge guys. Their numbers are way down. Fletch has been their best defensive lineman, and he's like, they cut him. they were trying to get rid of him. So yeah, it's very low. I do think Jalen Carter will be a very good player in this league. But both those guys, I mean, I don't know about Jordan Davis. I mean, both those guys have to figure out a way to be year-round players, not just half a season.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was another one of yours. We won't get into that. The Jalen and Jordan disappearing act, you called it. How about the new guys coming in? They haven't worked out.
Yeah. And I mean, they were all kind of
on defense we're talking about.
Yeah. 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 They haven't worked out, and they were all guys that were high profile guys and Pro Bowl guys, and a couple. Byard's never been a Pro Bowl, has he? But
I believe so.
Was he in the Pro Bowl? But yeah, they're all high profile guys have been good starters. Reuben maybe not quite as much, but none of them. And look, there were moves Howie had to make. They didn't have anybody.
Yeah, Byard's a 2-time Pro Bowl or 2-time All Pro.
Oh wow, okay. And Shaq the same way. None of them made an impact. I mean, they were all just bad. And look, they came into a very tough situation with the. I mean, they were all bad before this coordinator change, but they're moves that Howie's usually pretty good at. Although his trade deadline moves haven't worked out for the most part. Jannard Avery, but they just didn't fit in. They're slow. I wrote a piece the other day about how when you have guys kind of passing through, you lose a little bit of your culture, because they're not. Being an Eagle doesn't mean anything to a guy that's going to be here for 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 10 weeks. They weren't born and raised here. They didn't come up through the ranks. And I think that's part of it. But the big thing is they're just not very good anymore. None of them.
The one that
confuses, and they played a ton of snaps.
Yeah, the one that confuses me the most is Byard. I thought he had more left in this. Shaq Leonard, like, you knew that the back injuries had taken their toll.
Yeah.
Bradley Roby, I didn't expect much there. Nick Morrow got cut for a reason. Zach Cunningham was out there until August.
Yeah.
Byard's the one to me that one hurts the most if you're the Eagles, because you had to trade to get him. And I didn't expect him to be great, but he's been a big disappointment.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's roll through these last ones. Matt Patricia, we talked about him enough already. Big plays on both sides of the football, just a problem. They give up too many. They don't get enough.
Yeah, and I'll whittle it down to this. I think I did like a plus minus here somewhere. Through the Miami game, Eagles had 11 more 25-yard plays on offense than they allowed on defense. 11 more. So they were plus 11 in 25-yard plays through the 7th game. Since then, they allowed 17 more 25-yard plays than they had on offense. So it is basically a complete turnaround. They went from one of the top big play teams in the league on offense and one of the best big play defenses, and those two flipped. They just started giving up big plays all over the place. And I mean, they haven't had a 40-yard offensive snap in their last 7 games. And they had 8 in the first 10 games. They were 3rd in the league with most 40-yard plays. And I just picked that as a random 40 yards. Seems like a big play. They haven't attacked down the field. When they have Jalen's missed guys, it's yeah. I mean, this offense wasn't really built to go. I mean, at times they've gone 75 yards in 10 plays, but it's supposed to be a big play offense with Jalen. Just hasn't happened.
Yeah, and that's one of the stats that Nick Sirianni actually does care about, and he defines them in a unique way. He calls 16-plus yard passes and 10-plus yard runs as explosives. When you use those metrics, they're not good either. So.
Yeah, any metric you use, they're bad.
Yeah. This one I really like. No one got better.
Oh, it was yours. It was your idea.
Well, that's why I like it so much.
Stole it.
You're right. I was like, man, this Rube's got a good idea here. No one got better. And this is coaching, and this isn't the head coach necessarily. This is the entire coaching staff. Name me one player who got better this year.
Yeah, and
Landon?
He was about the same.
No, I think he was better.
I think Jordan Mailata played better than last year a little bit.
I agree with that. So Stout, we know Stout's good,
right? But otherwise, I mean, you would expect Reed Blankenship to make big strides. Now, I'm not including like rookies. I mean, I thought Keely Ringo, Sidney Brown did some good things. Eli, to an extent, Ricks did some good things. But talking about guys who were on the team last year, I mean, so many guys regressed or just never, yeah, and that's a damning statement on the entire coaching staff.
Yeah,
I couldn't think of one player that was here last year, other than maybe a couple of offensive linemen who got a little bit better. But on defense, young guys on offense, just there aren't any. Devin Allen,
I agree.
Devin Allen got better.
The last one on your list was their inability to stop the run defensively. They were the best run defense team in the league before the bye week.
And then they were second to worst after the bye week.
It's amazing to go, like, you could see it regressing, but to regress to the point where it's an extreme weakness is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I think part of it, like early in the season, and I think you said this on a pod a while ago, I think teams assumed they couldn't run on the Eagles because they were so good against the run last year. I think it was through 7 weeks, the Eagles were actually on pace to allow the fewest rushing attempts per game in history, in NFL history. Teams were averaging like 19 carries a game, which is an incredibly low number. Now, they were also averaging 3.7 yards per carry, which is really good for the Eagles defense. So they were stopping them. They weren't allowed big plays. But it just seemed like at some point teams started sticking with it and hammering it, and Eagles just kept giving out. It's like eventually they just hit some big runs, and they just kept doing it. And they just fell apart. Now, I think Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis's slump, or whatever you want to call it, regression in the second half, has something to do with this. I mean, when's the last time we saw Jordan Davis make a big play? It's been a long time. But it's not just them. I mean, the tackling was atrocious. The guys we mentioned before, I mean, all those guys were Morrow missed a ton of tackles. Blankenship missed a ton of tackles. Really, all the safeties and linebackers did. Slay was probably their best tackling cornerback. I mean, which he probably wouldn't even want that. He wouldn't want that designation. But they just tackled awful. The guys were out of their gaps. I mean, in that Arizona game, would they have 221 rushing yards? There's some plays where there'd be like 3 guys in a gap, and then nobody here. Like Connor would just run the other way. I mean, he's a good player, but they were so undisciplined, confused, slow. It's unprecedented for a run defense to go from this extreme to that extreme. It's never happened. And I don't think there's any one reason for it, but you put it together, and it's and Tampa runs the ball pretty well. That Rachaad White's okay. He's not great, but he might be great Monday.
I think they might be okay in that area.
Okay.
This Tampa Bay offense just isn't very good.
No. Well, they have a couple good receivers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the issue defensively.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break and we'll wrap up on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. That line is now 3 points Eagles favored. We'll really get into the Bucks on Thursday's pod, but some quick thoughts. Like what sticks out to you most about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Well, yeah, I mean, they have, Godwin and Evans are really good. Evans is a Hall of Famer, and Baker Mayfield's had a good year. I mean, he's played well. He's not, he's with his fourth team. Eagles haven't played, like most of the quarterbacks they've played in the last 20 years in the postseason. I mean, even go 30 years, Aikman's and Mahomes and Kurt Warner's. Everywhere you turn, there's Kurt Warner. They faced great quarterbacks in the postseason for the most part. But I mean, this is a guy who's a journeyman, former first pick, but hasn't had, he's got a losing record in his career. He's with his fourth team, like I said, and he was a failure in Cleveland. You should be able to beat Baker Mayfield, but, we'll see how that goes. But, they blitz a lot, and they have Mike Evans are the two things that kind of on each side of the ball that you're concerned with.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially like if they get Godwin going in the slot. Middle of the field will be a problem.
Yeah, every part of the field is going to be a problem, Dave. The side of the field, the top of the field, the bottom of the field. Todd Bowles has coached 100 games, has never won a playoff game. The 12th most games coached in NFL history by a head coach who hasn't won a playoff game. And I didn't include his interim stint with the Dolphins because I think they'd already been eliminated when he became the head coach. But, I like Todd. Obviously he was in an impossible situation when he was here in 2012. He's a great guy. Temple guy. Obviously played for Arians at Temple and kind of followed him around everywhere. I'm not, he's a defensive coach. I don't think he's a great head coach. We'll see how it goes. Have you decided who you're picking? Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Well, we have plenty of time for that. We haven't even practiced yet.
No, it's not going to change my mind.
Okay. Alec Hallaby. We want to mention this before we get off of this podcast. A couple of GM looks for him. Interviews set up with Washington, Carolina. For those of you who don't know Alec Hallaby, he has one of two assistant GM titles in the Eagles organization. The other one is John Ferrari, but Hallaby's really the one on the football operations, like the football side of things. He's been with the organization for a long time, and I think it's just a matter of time before he's a GM in this league.
Very sharp guy. Very shrewd, very smart. Very impressive guy in the few times we've gotten to talk to him and meet him and deal with him. So, Howie's lost so many people from that staff, from his staff as the years have gone by. Some good, some really good people, and it's an issue trying to keep replacing these people. And he thinks the world of Alec Hallaby, but there's no room for advancement if you're under Howie here. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, they've lost so many people in recent years. Ian Cunningham, Brandon Brown, Catherine Raish. I mean, they've lost a lot of talented people, and they're going to keep losing them.
Brett Veach.
Well, that's going back a little ways, but
he's he's
Andy Weidel left.
Yeah, a lot of good people. And he's got, he keeps hiring from within, and he keeps kind of trying to keep the pipeline going, but it's tough to do.
It is. He's done a better job at that than some coaches replenishing their coaching staff.
No question about it. I think he's done a very good job of it overall.
You lose Andrew Barry, bring in the twin brother, Adam Barry.
That's right. And he's been really creative. I mean, Adam Barry was on Wall Street, right?
Working for Goldman Sachs, yeah.
Yeah. It's the
only even Alec Halaby.
Only sacks the Eagles have lately.
Yeah, not bad. Even Alec Halaby, really kind of unique, a non-traditional background, did not play a high level of football.
Did he play any football?
He played high school football.
Did he?
Yeah, but didn't play at a high level. Was not considered a football guy, quote unquote. He really made his name in analytics, and that's really still his stronghold. But like he was a divisive figure in the front office for a lot of years because old school football guys, and now you have this nerd coming in telling you about the numbers, and you go, well, nah, I know football. So it took him a long time to win over some coaches.
And I think 10 years ago, he wouldn't have been a candidate for GM jobs. But I think
in a way, Howie's success has kind of opened the door for other non-traditional candidates.
I think that's true. And I think teams are more open to guys with that background than they used to be.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. They would miss him. They would, they don't want to lose him, but it's tough you can't block him if he's going to get a GM job.
Can't.
That's all I really had. I did want to mention real quickly. I don't know if you've been following this Cutter Gauthier, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, story, the Flyers dude. So the prospect, their top prospect, just got traded because he didn't want to play here. I mean, I get our analytics reports. Yesterday we had a JD Drew story popping because people were Googling JD Drew. Like that's the level of hate this kid is always going to get whenever he ends up in Philly. 19-year-old kid, by the way. So a long time to hate him, which is really fun for Philadelphia. Made me think about like who are some of the biggest villains in Eagles history?
How about Orlando Scandrick?
He's a recent one. It's funny because we did this during COVID when we were really trying to think of anything to do. And we came up with like for each sport, we came up with the top 4 villains. And it's funny now looking back because one of them in 2020 was Jadeveon Clowney, just because he knocked Carson Wentz out of that game.
Yeah.
But the other top 3 on the list were Norman Brayman, Michael Irvin, and Chip Kelly. I think if we did this again, Clowney would be out of there.
Yeah.
Who do you think would take that next spot?
Well, I mean, I think Brayman will always be number 1. I mean, Brayman's the guy who oversaw the dismantling of, Reggie and Clyde and Seth and Andre and Wes. All those guys left under his watch. Keith Jackson, Keith Byers, Eric Allen. I mean, he just because he didn't believe in free agency. So just you guys leave. I'll build around Anton Davis. So I'll show you guys how football teams built. But I don't know. Do you have a name in mind from more recently?
Well, we had the honorable mentions from when we did this in 2020 were Troy Aikman, Rondé Barber, Tiki Barber, Joe Jaravicius, Rich Kotite, Pete Morelli, T.O., and Drew Pearson, Michael Strahan as well. Yeah.
I mean, some of those are kind of dated.
Mm-hmm. They're still like names that give you a visceral reaction, I think, if you're an Eagles fan. Like, I think anyone in my age group hears Joe Jaravicius and they go, ugh. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but I mean, that's one play, I mean, and that's just the guy made a big play in the Eagles.
How about Debo?
Yeah, because that's a good one because it's more than just what he did on the field. I mean,
and I mean, Jonathan Gannon as well, certainly.
Yeah.
To a lot of people.
Yeah. I think Debo's a really good one because it wasn't just his performance on the field. It's that he laughed at the Eagles, as he was doing it. It was more than just like Jaravicius. It was one play. Matt Bryant,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you could come up with guys who made one giant play.
I think fans, if they had to vote between Debo and Gannon, would vote Gannon.
Probably. Kadarius Toney? No.
I think Debo over Toney.
Andy Reid?
No, I don't think so. I think people like Big Red.
I think he'd be on both lists.
Maybe.
Yeah, he'd be one of those guys on both lists.
Like, I don't think he'd make it very high on either.
Yeah, maybe not. But those are good names. Who are the other honorable mentions?
That was Aikman, Strahan, both Barbers, Jared Vicious.
I love that. The whole family.
Yeah, the whole family. Mom, dad, cousins, uncles.
Mama Barber. Yeah, well.
I do like a good villain, though.
Yeah.
I especially like a villain who appreciates being a villain.
Orlando Scandrick.
Yeah, that was a little fake.
Yeah, oh yeah. He was trying to get a TV job.
Yeah.
He was trying to, so why did this guy not want to play in Philly?
So some of the reports are and I don't know, I don't know hockey like this, right? So but they're like, some are about they didn't want to be under a rookie GM. It was about Tortorella. There were some people questioning whether or not Kevin Hayes had a hand in this, a former Flyer, where things didn't end well. But it's fascinating, and he's 19 years old. He's really good. So
did theoretically, they get a lot back for him?
Yeah, they did. They got a really good defenseman and it was like one of those situations where you got to like get something, because otherwise you're really in trouble.
I feel like as long as the Flyers muck it up in the corners, they got a chance against anyone.
Chris Terry and Bundy had a great line about Cutter. He said if he went into the corner, he's talking about his physicality. If he went into the corner with 12 eggs in his pocket, he'd walk away and none of the eggs would be broken.
That's awesome.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I have. I wanted to end it there. I think villains are fun.
Are there any is there like any media villains in Philadelphia? I guess.
Yeah, but we don't have to get into that.
I think we should do a whole podcast on that. Media
Maybe
villains.
in May.
All right, we'll do that.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that like button, subscribe there as well. We got a few 5-star reviews. Wanted to shout out Speener D, Friends with Pods, and Bob Fett 86. We appreciate the kind words. We do read those. Just some nice things. Speener D, huge Eagles fan. Check out during the off season. But then he says even in the off season he watches and listens the day it's released. So we appreciate that. Friends with Pods said he appreciates that we're realistic with what we're seeing, but are not overly negative. I don't know if that was the case today. We're trying to
he just ran down 10 reasons they suck, but we're not overly negative.
And then Bob Fett 86 lives in Wisconsin. So we're a way to keep him up to date on his team. So we appreciate all that from you guys. If anyone's around Center City on Thursday, come down out the Wicked Wolf. We have a Q&A, me, Rube, John Clark, Ray Didinger, Barrett Brooks.
What's that, a 12th and Chestnut?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, that's it. Any final words?
No.
All right, we'll be back with you guys on Thursday. It's playoff week. Catch the fever. For Reuben, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.